8:15 in the morning. That's the exact time this all went down.
11 employees are sitting in a cramped back room, just waiting while a store manager stands at the front and reads directly from a corporate script.
You are terminated, effective immediately. It's brutal, right? And here's the crazy part. Across the country, those exact same words were being read to 3,400 other people, all at the exact same hour.
So this brings up a massive question for us in this explainer today. How do you actually tell the difference between a simple business cost and the thing that cost is quietly protecting? Because look, Circuit City's finance team, they really weren't wrong about the raw numbers in front of them. Firing your most expensive employees absolutely does save you real, calculable money. But what they couldn't put a number on was what that money was actually buying them. And honestly, that's the part of the story that most people skip over on their way to calling this whole thing an obviously stupid mistake. Let's set the stage a bit. By 2007, Circuit City was the #2 electronics retailer in the US, right behind Best Buy. They had roughly 640 stores, and here's the kicker. They weren't in a crisis. They weren't even losing money that quarter. They were just a large, established retailer trying to trim some fat in a really competitive market.
So, leadership started digging, and they zeroed in on a very specific line item. They realized that their longest tenured sales associates had, through years of regular raises and promotions, ended up making a bit more than the going local market rate for their roles. And their solution? Well, on March 28, 2007, the company fired 3,400 of those experienced employees in a single morning. We're talking about 8 to 9% of their entire in-store workforce, just gone.
Of course, the corporate spin doctors got a hold of it. The company's official public language actually called this mass firing a wage management initiative. The mechanics of it were pretty harsh. Basically, anyone earning above roughly $18 an hour was let go. They were escorted out that same day, handed 4 weeks of severance, and then told, get this, that they could reapply for their old jobs after a 10-week waiting period. But naturally, it would be at a lower pay rate, and there was absolutely no sales experience required for whoever else wanted to apply. Now, you might be wondering how Wall Street reacted. Well, the market's initial read was actually positive. Circuit City's stock bumped up about 2% the day the firings were announced. It was just a totally straightforward reaction to a company visibly tightening its belt. Because on paper, this looked exactly like disciplined financial management. You identify where you're overpaying, you correct it, and you sit back and watch the savings roll in. It makes perfect sense, right? Except, within weeks, the reality on the ground was a completely different story. The damage was glaringly visible on the sales floor way before it showed up on any financial statement. Customers would walk into a store looking to drop serious cash on a home theater system, and they literally couldn't find anyone who could explain how it worked. Why? Because the only people who knew how to explain it were the ones who had just been escorted out the door. It didn't take long for the experts to notice either. Retail analyst Tim Allen told the Washington Post that the problem was incredibly obvious. Experienced, knowledgeable staff had just been swapped out for novices who simply didn't know the products.
And the financial hit was brutal. That holiday season, which, let's be honest, is the make-or-break time for any consumer electronics retailer, their same-store sales plummeted almost 12%.
So by the time the dust settled at the end of 2007, the stock had absolutely collapsed. It tanked to around $4.20 a share, which is roughly just a quarter of what it had been trading at when they first announced the firings. Talk about a planned backfiring. Now, to be fair, we need to be precise here. The popular version of this story likes to point to the mass firing as the sole cause of the company's death, but it's a bit more complicated than that. Detailed retrospectives show that Circuit City was already severely weakening its own foundation. We're talking nearly $1 billion in stock buybacks between 2003 and 2007, a totally failed proprietary disk format called DivX from years earlier, and some incredibly costly real estate bets.
And then the macroeconomic hammer blow hit, the 2008 credit crisis. By this point, Circuit City had already drained so much of its own cash cushion that they just couldn't secure the financing they desperately needed to survive the storm.
So, did the mass firing directly cause the bankruptcy? Not exactly. But what it did do was remove the one crucial asset, knowledgeable, trusted staff, that might have actually kept enough customers loyal to buy the company the time it needed when everything else went wrong all at once. The clock ran out pretty fast after that. Circuit City filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on November 10, 2008. That is less than 2 years after the mass firing. And in the months that followed, they couldn't even find a single buyer to bail them out. Finally, in January 2009, a bankruptcy judge ordered full liquidation.
All 567 remaining U.S. stores were shut down permanently. 34,000 people lost their jobs. Think about that. That's roughly 10 times the number of employees they let go in that original cost-cutting move.
So what's our main takeaway from all of this? The lesson here isn't just never cut costs. I mean, Circuit City's finance team did the math, and honestly, they were completely right about the exact dollar amount they were going to save. But what they missed is that expertise on a sales floor isn't just a wage line. That expertise? It's the entire reason a customer actually trusts making a $500 purchase in your store instead of just going somewhere cheaper.
The reality is, not every value driver is going to show up as a neat little line item on a spreadsheet. And those hidden drivers are exactly the ones a purely financial cost-cutting exercise is absolutely guaranteed to miss. Why? Because the tool you're using to make the decision literally can't see them.
In the end, Circuit City didn't fail because it did bad math. It failed because it blindly trusted math that only measured half the picture. And that is a mistake no spreadsheet can fix.